This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, this is Maureen Bogey.
And this is Dylan Hackworth.
And you are listening to The Creep, The Street, The Podcast.
Chomp. Delicious.
Oh, come on. I didn't know where that was going, but I'm glad where it went.
Oh, that was delicious.
Thank you all for being here today. We are blessed beyond measure.
Amen.
Okay, to have you here joining us today.
Hey, church is in session, folks.
That's right. That is correct. To keep up on what we are up to, feel free to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Creep Street Podcast. Twitter, we're at Creep Street Pod. On our Facebook, we have a subgroup called Citizens of the Milky Way. It's a forum where anyone can post memes, articles, funny stories, ask questions, anything like that. It's just a little zone for that. Also, if you are a fan of the show, we respectfully ask that you like, rate, subscribe, leave a review, comment, any of these sorts of things to engage. Really helps the damn cast.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now, we've heard a lot of yicking and yakking around the town that one episode a week isn't enough.
Oh, hey, I don't blame you.
It's just not enough. You need more.
Welcome to reality. Reality check, folks.
Reality bites. And here we go. Here's what is exciting, is that we have a solution to this problem. Yes, it is at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast.
Tasty.
Yes, this is where you can get all sorts of bonus Creep Street content. It's amazing. We love it, okay? We've got movie reviews, movie commentaries, short stories. We've got interviews. We've got conversations. We have full-blown bonus episodes.
Yes, we do.
You can check all of that out once again at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast.
I love it, Maureen.
Okay. So last week we talked a little bit about entities with invisibility cloaks.
Yeah, we did.
We went there.
Super freaky, huh? Predator-like entities. Wow.
Getting a little cray. But the good news is you all loved it. So thank you all for listening. We so appreciate you listening to that episode. And if you haven't listened to it yet, give her a listen.
Yes, it's fun. It was fun to research.
Oh, yeah. But Dylan, today's a brand new day.
Oh, yes, it is.
It's a brand new pod.
Ooh.
So what are we talking about today?
Now, folks, this episode is classic Creep Street.
Okay.
And that it's kind of hard to define, but man, is it creepy. We are about to venture to northern New England, to the northern part of the state of New Hampshire.
Oh.
Folks, buckle up, because this week's episode is The Vampire of the White Mountains.
Wow. There you have it.
Well, let me sink my teeth into my sources here and tell you what they are.
Okay.
First was a book we've used a few times, Passing Strange, True Tales of New England Hauntings and Horrors by Joseph Citro, and a little blurb from fandom.com. Now, Maureen.
Yeah.
According to my source, this is one of the most incredible legends of Upper New England, and baby, I cannot wait to share it.
All right.
This is classic campfire tale. This is one to tell by the campfire or turning the lights off, spooky. This is classic.
Okay.
Now, I named this episode The Vampire of the White Mountains, but this is not about a vampire in the traditional sense. May not even be a vampire. My source categorized it technically as a vampire, and I understand why, so that's why I kept the moniker.
Yeah.
But this entity could possibly be many, many things. Is it a man? Is it a ghost? A vampire? Well, one thing we do know for sure is that no matter what this thing is now, it was at one time a man named Tom Benton. In northern New Hampshire, nestled somewhere within the rolling White Mountains, you will find the tiny, quaint town of Benton. Now, despite its beauty, there has been a shadow that has hung over this area for centuries. Hikers in the White Mountains, especially while on Mount Moosilauke, and I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, it's Moosilauke, Moosilauke. I'm just going to say Moosilauke.
Pop off, yeah.
But many hikers on Mount Moosilauke especially have reported encountering a shadowy figure, robed in a dark cape with long white hair. But almost as soon as they glimpse this entity, it's gone, vanished into the night. In most of these reports, the encounter is actually fairly mundane, and many people kind of mention as an afterthought. They aren't aware of what they saw when they saw it.
Okay.
That sort of thing.
Got it.
They might see the glimpse of a foot ducked behind a tree or something. You know, there's other hikers out there, who knows? Probably the folks that have these encounters and don't even realize it are probably folks who are unfamiliar with the legend of the place. Because some who have encountered this entity have reported horrible, horrible things. A prime example, consider this a little prologue.
Okay.
Before we get into the meat of this story. A prime example happened in the 1970s when a student at Dartmouth College decided to take off by himself for a solo climb on the head wall of what is called the Jabadunk Ravine. Well, the student didn't return when he told his friends that he would. And naturally, his friends formed a little search party to go find him. And find him they did. They found him just where he said he would be, but it was instantly clear that something had happened to the young man. They found him with a strange, glazed-over look in his eyes, like he was in a stupor. He walked about aimlessly, and when he spoke to his friends, they knew immediately this guy was in shock. Examining his body, they found numerous cuts and bruises, as well as a fractured skull. Authorities were quickly alerted, and the young man was put on a stretcher and taken for medical care at the ravine camp, and from there he was taken via emergency vehicle to a hospital in the nearby town of Hanover. As he recovered, friends and authorities found the young man was being very vague about what had happened to him. But he eventually told them that when he was climbing along a ledge, suddenly a hand shot out through an opening in the rocks and shoved him. Like I said, consider that a little prologue.
Okay.
So when you hear that story without any context or backstory, you might probably assume that maybe it was a hermit living alone in the mountains, or perhaps maybe even a ghost of some kind.
Yeah.
When you consider that reports like this have been going back for about 2 centuries, well, you'll probably think, yeah, it's a ghost. And it certainly might be. However, let's get the full backstory and then circle back at the end to see what we think this thing might be.
Okay.
Buckle up.
Here we go.
In the late 18th century, one of the first families to settle in the area was the Benton family, hence why the town is named Benton today. One of the children was a boy named Tom Benton. Right away, Tom stood out at school, which was, a little one-room schoolhouse. He seemed to be able to quickly master almost any subject in class. Not only was he the top of the class, but my source says his intellectual prowess even exceeded his teachers. Tom quickly became the toast of the town, and word of his gifts even caught the attention of a wealthy judge living in the town of Plymouth. The judge persuaded Tom's parents to let the gifted young boy come live in the city with the judge and his family. There he would have access to much better schools and opportunities to nurture his intellect. Not to mention, he would have access to the judge's extensive library. Also, especially in 2023, kind of creepy when a guy's like, let your child come live with me.
Yeah.
A lot of bad vibes there, but for the sake of this story, we'll go along with it.
Okay.
Once there, Tom just kept impressing folks. The judge, of course, wanted Tom to follow in his footsteps and seek a career in law, but all along, Tom was much more interested in medicine. And they agreed that if the boy wanted to study medicine, then dang it, he should do so. The problem was, the best medical school in the world at that time happened to be across the globe in Heidelberg, Germany. The cost, of course, of getting him there, getting him housed and enrolled in school would have been astronomical.
Oh, yeah.
But at the time, northern New England was in desperate need of doctors, so the judge came up with an idea. The judge arranged a sort of fundraiser with the locals of the town, and essentially, this fundraiser would help pay for the cost of his education. And the agreement was that all these families in the community would help fund the education, and once completed, Tom would return to the area to be their doctor.
I mean, it's a damn GoFundMe.
As there was nowhere else in the world Tom wished to live other than northern New Hampshire, he happily agreed. Now, as you may have guessed, Tom Benton was as much of a hot shot in Germany as he was in New England. There was a bit of catching up to do at first, as Tom did not know a word of German, but just like everything else, Tom showed a remarkable ability to learn the language, and in no time, he was once again top of his frickin' class.
There you go.
I mean, this guy is a hotshot.
Big time.
Baby.
Here we go.
He's rocking Oakley shades.
Okay.
Just kidding. While there, an elderly professor took great interest in Tom and began working with him closely. Well, Tom soon found that this elderly professor had a past that he didn't want to discuss.
Oh.
Like Tom, this man was very gifted when he was young, but later in life did something that got him ostracized from the rest of society. No one would really tell Tom what happened.
Oh, no.
The most information he got was that the elderly professor had once committed some, quote, blasphemous experimentation.
Yikes.
Regardless, Tom and the professor worked very closely together, with Tom often having dinner at the professor's house where they would discuss subjects such as chemistry and theology well into the night. And when the elderly professor passed away, Tom was left a small inheritance. He got some money, some books, and an old locked trunk.
What the heck?
There we go. That's your, what they call it, Chekhov's gun. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, babe.
It kind of is the Chekhov's gun of this story.
And if there are any, non-theater nerds out there, Chekhov's gun is this rule in theater based on Anton Chekhov, playwright extraordinaire. Basically, if you got a gun in Act 1, in Act 2, that motherfucker better go off.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this old locked trunk is gonna fucking go off.
Okay, here we go.
Tom finishes his 4 years studying abroad, and as promised, he returned home and serviced the community of Benton and the surrounding areas. And the residents there were so happy to see that their investment had paid off. Tom showed incredible prowess in medicine. His ability to properly diagnose and treat were unparalleled, and his reputation as an excellent healer soon spread. People began showing up from hundreds of miles away seeking his treatment. And of course, many lucrative offers from big city hospitals were offered to Tom, but he always politely declined, choosing to stay in the place he loved most.
There you have it.
For a couple of years, Tom enjoyed massive success and even ended up engaged to the daughter of a local wealthy and influential landowner. All seemed well.
I have a feeling something's about to go south.
Then, sometime around the year 1816, it all went to shit.
Oh, fuck.
Quick note, stories of what actually happened differ a bit, quite a bit really, but the two most likely answers is that Tom's fiancée fell in love with another man and took off, or his fiancée came down with typhoid, and despite his excellent care, she passed away. Whichever happened, or whatever happened, Tom was grief-stricken. Some say that because he had experienced nothing but success, really, his whole life, he was kind of ill-equipped to deal with failure. And this sent him into a spiral, but who knows? Either way, Tom soon began to get sloppy. He would miss appointments or fail to make his rounds at the appropriate times. His appearance became increasingly disheveled looking, and he took on an almost sickly pallor.
Yikes. Okay. All right.
As the years went on, Tom became progressively more and more withdrawn from society. He seemed to lose all interest in practicing medicine. He moved out of his nice house and moved to a rundown little shack that sat on the slopes of Mount Musalak. The once promising Tom was now being described by the locals as a reclusive hermit.
Oh, no.
Now, when someone suddenly loses the love of their life and, has their life's work flushed down the drain, it's interesting. Now, this is a very dark thing to think, but that is when someone might be inclined to self-harm or even commit suicide.
Yeah.
Tom was different, though. It's said that Tom wanted to extend his life, perhaps forever if possible. And some say he discovered a way to do just that. By the time Tom moved into this reclusive little shack, he didn't have many items to call his own. But there was one item he held very dear. It was the old locked trunk that was given to him by his old professor. He had not yet ever opened it. It was kind of this thing he treasured, but he never really opened it. So he pulls out the dusty old trunk and opens her up to find records, journals, notebooks, medical texts. It even contained the old professor's research. The very blasphemous research that the old professor had been ostracized for. He had been searching for the secret to eternal life. And Tom was gonna pick up where he left off.
Whoa, okay. All right.
Now, obviously, friends of Tom's grew concerned about him.
Oh, yeah.
They hardly ever saw him. Occasionally, they would see him at a local store or something, but he would never stick around to chat. Sometimes he would leave without even acknowledging them. If anyone sought him out for medical treatment, he would refuse them. And of course, rumors and speculation of all kind made their way around the community. One night, a group of local boys decided they'd sneak over onto Tom's property and see what it was he was up to. So in the dark of night, the boys crept up to the shack and peered in the windows. And what they saw scared the shit out of them. They saw Tom with his white hair, messy, fraying out in every direction, his clothing old and nasty, a look on his face of wild, maniacal determination, tubes and beakers scattered everywhere, quite literally what you think of when you think of the mad scientist.
Yeah.
The trope of the mad doctor, the mad scientist. This is literally he's the poster boy for it.
Oh, yeah.
As the days passed, suddenly, animals in the area started dying under mysterious circumstances.
No.
A milk cow was found dead in her stable. Dead sheep began turning up, their fluffy white wool dotting the green landscape. Healthy horses would be found dead in their stalls when they were perfectly fine the night before. It started to grab people's attention. Now, obviously, animals die like everything else does, but this was all of a sudden lots of it all at once.
Yeah, very weird.
The one thing they all had in common was a fresh wound found behind the left ear.
Oh,
but it didn't stop with animals. The local undertaker one day was transporting the body of a young deceased man. He was away for only a moment, and when he returned, he found the corpse was gone.
Oh, that's bad.
A search party was formed, and they happened to find the corpse, discarded in some bushes near the town of Warren, New Hampshire. But what was weird was another corpse was laying right next to it. Both were naked, both with that mysterious wound behind the left ear. Well, they decided to check in with old Dr. Tom to see if he had anything to say about these odd occurrences. And you gotta know, because everyone was already creeped out about him, whether he was responsible or not, people are kind of thinking, it's that creepy old guy.
Yeah.
It makes me think there's this side note, but there's this really cool Tom Waits song where he's not even singing. It's not it's almost like a poem in a way, but it's called What's He Building in There?
Oh, it's very spooky.
very spooky.
I love it.
It creates this sense of anxiety and paranoia, and you hear the sound of like someone tinkering, and it's like Tom Waits. It's like the obsessive neighbor. It's what's he building in there? We have a right. The last line, I love it. We have a right to know.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, it draws that line. Where's the real monster? You know what I mean? Anyway, not that this has anything to do with that. It reminded me of that Tom Waits song. It's really creepy. Check it out. But when this search party stopped by his place, he wasn't there. They searched the place, but found no clue of where the doctor might have gone. And they would check in a few more times over the coming days, and it became apparent that the doctor was gone and was not coming back. While he was never officially seen again, hunters in the area would repeatedly claim to catch a glimpse of him in the wilderness, all within this 30 square mile area around or on Mount Musalak. He would be robed in a black cape, they said, with his vivid white hair laying down his back. On top of that, they said he had gotten old, like unnaturally old.
Oh.
Well, things got really crazy. One cold day in November of 1825, a local woman there in Benton was outside hanging her laundry on the line, like you do. And suddenly, she was startled by the sound of her daughter screaming. She turned around and was horrified to see a figure cloaked in black running off, carrying her daughter, with her daughter fighting back, trying to get free, but she couldn't. The woman's husband took off after the stranger, and the woman ran to the neighbors to get help. In no time at all, a band of armed men were on the trail of this fiend. They found the two sets of footprints, one of the fiend and the other of the girl, and they followed those tracks in the direction of Little Tunnel Ravine and made chase. The farther they went, the harder it was to traverse. When the wilderness got too thick for horses, they continued their search on foot. Luckily, though, they thought, the ravine would slow down the kidnapper. And like I said, by now, a lot of these folks were thinking, it's Dr. Tom.
Yeah.
It's Dr. Tom.
He's being weird.
But that's when the footprints they were following abruptly stopped. The men were shocked. There was no sign of either the girl or the kidnapper. How was this even possible? It's like the tracks just stopped. That was when they heard a sinister laugh from above them. Looking up, they were horrified to see Dr. Tom standing on the edge of a cliff, the girl in his clutches, struggling to get free. The doctor lifted the girl above his head and tossed her down to the men below.
Oh.
Unfortunately, they were unable to catch her.
Oh, God.
And the girl died. The mad doctor would evade their capture. So now it's suddenly become real bad, real dark.
Oh, God.
Real dark here, folks. Fortunately, as time went on, no more kids were kidnapped, and even the animals stopped strangely dying, which little benefit there. Yet people would often still report getting a brief glimpse of the doctor when in the wilderness. Decades later, in 1860, two entrepreneurs by the names of Darius Swain and James Clement from the town of Warren decided that the top of Mount Musalak would be the perfect spot for a hotel. The name of the hotel was to be the Prospect House, and it was going to be designed as a low stone building. Problem was, over the decades, the fear of the phantom doctor had not gone away. The two men couldn't find any tradesmen to actually do the job. No one wanted to stay overnight on the summit. Now, because of this, progress on building the place was very, very slow, primarily because the crew would have to travel every day up and down the mountain, up in the morning, down in the evening, because they didn't want to stay overnight. It was the 4th of July when the Prospect House had its big grand opening. More than 1,000 people made the journey up the mountain to celebrate. I mean, think about that. And you're not just talking like, getting on a bus. You're talking about by foot, by horse, by wagon,
Getting up a damn mountain.
Yeah. Even local sensation, the Newberry Brass Band, was there to entertain the guests.
Amazing.
It seemed like nothing could ruin the night.
Uh-oh.
Well, as night began to fall, the two entrepreneurs were surprised to realize that no one was actually booking a room to stay the night. Everyone was afraid the mad doctor might be lurking in the shadows around the hotel. And business didn't get any better. Clement and Swain were starting to think this whole thing was going to be a huge waste of time and money. They had to prove to folks somehow that it was safe to stay in the hotel. So they asked 2 rough-and-tumble, burly loggers to stay at the hotel over the winter. They promised the 2 men all the firewood, food, and drinks they would need to get them through the winter. They even installed a telegraph line so the men would be able to easily contact them if something went wrong. A month goes by and all is well. But then a huge winter storm came. For 3 days straight, the snow dumped on the mountain and the winds blew like crazy. The storm happened to hit just as supplies were running low. And when one of the loggers tried to contact Clement and Swain via the telegraph, they were very unpleasantly surprised to realize the lines had been blown down in the storm. So now we're getting shining like.
Yeah.
A hotel on a mountain that's cut off during the winter. I didn't even realize that till now.
Yeah.
Getting very shining like
Oh,
here,
yeah.
folks. A little bit of red rum, you know what I'm saying? Well, they considered their options and decided it would be easier to repair the telegraph line than to try to make it down the mountain during and after the storm. Because even once the storm passed, you got all this fresh snow. You might, 1, the trails are covered, and 2, you might, cause an avalanche. Who knows? They flipped a coin to see who would do the job, and when the storm finally broke at night, the logger chosen suited up and headed into the night. Now, before leaving, they agreed that if the first guy wasn't back in 20 minutes, the other would go out looking for him. When 20 minutes passed, the other logger suited up and ventured out into the night to find the other man. Even with his lantern, he could barely see because the wind and it was just blowing so hard, and it was very cloudy, and at nights the moon's covered up for the most part. And that's when a gust of wind blew out the man's lantern, essentially leaving him blind, except when the moon occasionally made a brief appearance between clouds. Well, he just held on to that telegraph line and kind of used it as his way of furthering, his journey into the dark. Imagine that. You can't see. All you've got is a line, and you're just walking into the dark. Horrifying.
I hate it.
And of course, you're probably all those stories you heard growing up about the fucking mad doctor are probably flooding back in your head.
Oh, big time.
Hanging onto the telegraph line, the man pressed forward, but tripped over something in the snow. It was his partner. He drug him back to the hotel and tried everything to revive him, but the man was gone.
Oh, no.
But he was puzzled, because how did this happen? The man hadn't been out there long enough to freeze to death. Examining the body, he soon discovered...
I think I know what you're going to say.
Say it with me, Creep Street. A
A
strange
bite on his
wound.
ass.
What?
So it wasn't a bite on his ass?
Oh, no, close though. I would be sexy.
Come on.
The man found a strange wound
Yeah.
behind the man's left ear.
Yeah, that's where I thought it was going. Fuck. Okay, all right.
All the stories now, like I said, that this guy had ever heard about the mad doctor came flooding back to him. Fear got the best of him, and he ran into the night screaming. When Swain, one of the entrepreneurs, was finally able to get to the mountaintop, the man's tracks had been covered, and the second logger was never seen again.
Oh, no.
So now, the entrepreneurs, Swain and Clement, they're trying to do their best to convince everyone that, hey, the loggers met their doom because of the storm.
Right.
But the locals knew better. They knew this was the work of the Phantom Doctor. In a last-ditch effort to salvage their investment, Swain and Clement hired a group of 20 men, armed to the fucking teeth, to stay the night at the top of the mountain. They drank, they sang, they played cards. No one slept a wink that night, and no one was harmed. They also chose to change the name of the place to Tip Top House, and business actually did pick up a bit.
Okay, sometimes you just need a good name.
We see that all the time.
Oh,
when
yeah.
something tragic or something bad happens at like a place, they will often change the name to kind of shake off the nasty. You know what I mean?
I do.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
So business picks up a little bit. In fact, it became so successful that expansions were made in both 1881 and 1901. And while the mountaintop had now become a busy place, there were still the occasional sightings of the Phantom Doctor. even to this day, when something happens on the mountain, it's often blamed on Dr. Tom. There was one time when another entrepreneur came to town and he built what is called a gravity railroad for logging on the mountain. Well, one day, an empty runaway train car came blazing at high speed down the mountain. Clearly, something had happened. So a group of men ventured up the mountain to see what the issue was, and along the way, they got their answer. They found the body of the brakeman, a man named Mr. Tommaso, whose corpse was so far from the train tracks, he couldn't have landed there or been flung there if he had either been hit by the train or flung from the train. His body, it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
And another thing is, if he had fallen off the train or been hit by the train, his body would have shown much more signs of damage. Because the only wound they found was a small, strange wound behind the man's left ear.
Oh my goosh. What the heck?
Yeah, and kid, we're now, this is Dr. Tom, if mortal, would have been dead by now.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yet this strange little wound, you know what I'm saying?
What the fuck?
Jumping forward now to October 24th, 1942. 4 students from Dartmouth are going for a hike up Slide Ravine. Along the way, they spotted an odd tower at the top of the mountain that they hadn't seen before. As they got closer, they were shocked to discover that the tower was a freestanding chimney. The entire tip-top house had disappeared, and all that was left was the chimney.
What?
The closer they got, they realized the entire hotel had burned to the ground. Yet, why did none of them see flames? Why did no one see flames? The only explanation they could think of was that the place had been struck by lightning, and because of the dense fog, maybe no one actually saw the place burn down. Now, whether the Phantom Doctor had anything to do with this is obviously impossible to say, yet sightings of him still happen to this day. Many say that after kidnapping numerous animals and people, perhaps the Phantom Doctor finally discovered the secret to eternal life. The story of the Phantom Doctor has now been passed down through generations, and today much of what is Mount Moosilauke and the surrounding area is owned by Dartmouth College.
Oh.
The author of my source even makes a point to note that whenever he has contacted people at Dartmouth to ask about the doctor, they all seem strangely reluctant. In 2002, a hiker was going down an unused trail and happened to find a single boot in the mud. After examination, it was clear that this boot was like centuries old.
Oh.
And apparently, even the TV show Supernatural has done an episode about Dr. Benton.
Oh, amazing. Very weird. What do you think is going on here?
So this is, and the source makes a good point of saying, this is one of those stories that has been passed down for generations. Mm-hmm. Surely a lot has probably been added to it over the years.
Right.
But we do know certain things. Like we do know there was a Dr. Tom Benton, and people vividly swear they've gotten this story passed down through their lineage from people, starting with people who were there in the day, and swear to God that this is all legit. Now, apparently at Dartmouth College, I guess a thing they do with incoming freshmen is they go and they spend a lot of time out in the wilderness, and they'll share the story of Dr. Benton. And it's really kind of an unknown story outside of that small sliver of New England.
Yeah, that's funny. I had never heard of this before.
So when I heard it, I thought, good golly, Miss Molly, let's make it an episode.
And you did the right thing. We here at Creep Street, we may not be from New England.
Yeah.
But we love the stuff.
Oh,
love New England.
Honestly, we love every place, right?
Every place is friggin' dope as hell.
Let's reevaluate Vampire.
Yeah.
The book, and my source even notes that this is not what you think of when you think of a vampire.
Right.
But I get the idea because the eternal life thing. Mm-hmm. Also, you didn't see fang marks on the victims. What is it about the little spot? Now, I don't know anything about medicine. Maybe behind the left ear is like maybe when you're doing certain procedures or something, you do something. I don't know why the back of the left ear. There's nothing that says a vampire has to use fangs or bite you. Maybe
Yeah.
they subdue you and drain your blood using mortal instruments.
Yeah,
And then
that's very
just
true.
sip it like it's in a glass.
Put it in a cup like a goddamn gentleman.
Like a fucking civilized human being, for God's
Right,
sake.
right.
Class it up.
Absolutely.
He might be a monster, but he's classing it
He
up.
is classing it up. Very interesting, and maybe it's like not even just blood. Maybe it's like you're getting some fucking, I don't know,
Maybe-
pheromone or
Like spinal
Shit,
fluid or
I
some
don't know.
sort of like fluid from like the brain. Like, I don't know. That's what's interesting. So, in many ways, I think a proper title would have been The Ghoul of the White Mountains, because we don't know what he is.
we don't know. Because it also is reminding me a little bit of cattle mutilation and that
Yes.
kind of thing, which we often think of with UFOs,
Yeah.
alien encounters, things like that.
Yes.
So, I don't know, but I get why the vampire name is attributed. I understand. But it could be anything. You all out there, let us know, what are your theories? What are your thoughts? Feel free to reach out to us on any of our socials, or you can email us at creepstreetpodcast@gmail.com.
Well, Maureen, I got a list of names I wouldn't mind climbing to the top of Mount Moosalok with.
Oh, okay.
Folks, give it on up for the names of our top-tier Patreon subscribers. Of course, the Dream, James Watkins, the Finished Face, Fiat Lundqvist, the Madman, Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid, Chris Hackworth, the Oh-So-Suave Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker, Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool, Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude, Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand, Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the Killer Stud, Carl Staub, the Firestarter, Heather Carter, the Conqueror, Christopher Damian Damaris, the Awfully Awesome Annie, the Murderous Maggie Leach, the Sir of Sexy Sam Hackworth, the Evil Elizabeth Riley, Lauren Hellfire, Hernandez Lopez, the Maniacal Laura Maynard, the Vicious Karen Van Buren, the Arch Nemesis Aaron Bird, the Sadistic Sergio Castillo, the Rapscallion Ryan Crum, the Beast Benjamin Huang, the Devilish Chris Doucette, the Psycho Sam, the Electric Emily Zhang, the Renegade Corey Ramos, the Crazed Carlos, the Antagonist Andrew Park, the Monstrous Michaela Schur, the Witchy Wonder J.P. Weimer, and the Freaky Ben Forsyth.
Whoa. Big time wow and thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers, with a special shout out for that top tier. We love you so much. Thank you for doing all that you do for the cast. We are so grateful for you, and thank you to all of you for listening today. Once again, please like, rate, subscribe, leave a review, share us on social media, chat about us with your primary care physician, with your priest, your rabbi, whoever it may be. Spread the word, and thank you for joining us.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.